Are you a real estate professional and you are kind of panicking because of this NAR lawsuit settlement that just came out not too long ago? Well, Michelle and I are going to be talking about some of these changes that we've seen. We're going to talk about what we
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
how this affects our business, how it compares to some changes in the industry, especially in
Mhm.
the lending world that has
Mhm.
occurred, in the past decade or two. And we're going to talk about all of that. So to get started, Michelle has a couple questions for me, and we'll just get right into
Yeah.
it.
So, I know it's difficult to talk about the details
Right.
because how does this really change our industry? But how are you and your team handling what we know right now?
So we are paying very close attention to what our broker team and attorneys are letting us know
Mm-hmm.
from the top level. We're paying really close attention to all that. There's still a lot of information that not just us, who are out in the trenches selling homes, but
Mm-hmm.
our brokers, our managers, our attorneys. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet. And
Mm-hmm.
so we are just trying to pay as close attention to what's coming out from NAR because and I haven't read the full 108 pages, I'm going to be honest. But from my understanding, there is still the potential for changes to be made to that. It just, until we know for sure, it's hard to say exactly how we're going to shift what we do
Mm-hmm.
from an operations standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that when it comes down to it, and speaking of, to kind of break down what we do know so far, the big change is that we can't offer compensation through MLS anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a signed buyer representation agreement, and it has to be, as you mentioned, dated prior to the execution date of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it has to, and that's not just to represent a buyer and work with a buyer. That's to show a house, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're the listing agent or you're a buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a signed employment agreement with them
And
for
how,
that buyer.
well, we don't know. I was going to ask how we're going to govern that, but we don't know.
Yeah, we're not
We don't
100% sure
know.
yet. And then one of the other big things is you can't accept any compensation over and above what your buyer has agreed to pay you, even if the seller says that they were going to pay you more. So if a seller says he'll pay you 3% and you have a buyer rep for 2.5%, you can't accept 3%.
I had something really interesting. I'm trying to pull up here. Um, and you're going to laugh, but one of my colleagues had uploaded the 108 pages
Yeah.
into Chat GPT and asked Chat to summarize it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the summary while we're talking to you.
Yeah.
Um, there was also, and I was going to pull, there's a new Trek form is it Trek or TAR that's already drawn up an amendment or a
Um,
new document?
I'm not 100% sure if there is. Maybe I've missed it, but I know EXP has come out with several documents for our buyer representation agreement and our listing agreement. They've come out with some stuff that, once again, we need to dive deeper into and get training
Mm-hmm.
on and
Mm-hmm.
all that good stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
there's lots and lots of changes, is what I know.
So I remember this was years and years and years ago, and I thought about it as something that is. Have we heard whether or not you can charge, and would you need to get signed up front if you were going to start charging for showings,
Yeah.
like per showing?
Yeah. You have to have, I mean,
All of that has to be decided up front based on what we've read so far.
right. Like if you're going to, if some people are going to go to some kind of flat fee model or
Mm-hmm.
hourly based model or
Mm-hmm.
retainer or
Mm-hmm.
per door,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, if they're going to have like an a la carte menu of what they do, you have to have all that outlined with each individual client.
Well, and I was thinking about open houses and how this could possibly change open houses. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times your open houses are held by a buyer's agent that is using that as an opportunity to get a lead
Right.
or referral or buyer to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Choose the right word, right?
I think from there, I mean, it's almost like the information about brokerage services form.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have a substantial conversation,
Mm-hmm.
substantive, I don't know what the word is. Anyways, if you're going to have a serious conversation
Yeah.
about real estate with somebody, you have to have a signed IABS form that's required by Trek. And so now they're basically saying you have to have the same thing in the form of a buyer representation agreement. and it's got to outline all the details of how you get paid.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I do want to clear up is that this isn't saying that a seller cannot compensate a buyer's agent if they so choose.
If they choose to.
It's just saying that it can't be advertised anywhere on MLS. And as a listing agent, that means that, or sorry, as a buyer's agent, that means that if you have a representation agreement with a buyer and they say they're going to pay you 3% to represent them in a transaction, you have to, they may say, I only want to look at homes that are offering cooperative compensation. So you may have to call around and talk to the listing agents and find out which ones work for your buyer and which ones don't. And so that's, I think the whole thing was trying to get away from commission steering. But that kind of puts agents steering to the commission. Now it puts it to where the consumers are steering to the commission potentially. So there's a ton of unknowns. Another thing that as far as, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh yeah, on the listing agent side, people are saying that they're just going to go directly to the listing agent to work with them. But once again, we have to have a signed representation agreement saying that if we're going to show you the house, we're going to represent you, and here's how we're going to get compensated. And so there's just, it's really throwing a lot of very drastic changes with very limited structure, in my opinion, on how this is going to work out. And I think,
and the DOJ could change all of it up before it's ever even agreed upon.
Right. I know the date is in July of whenever they're saying this is going into effect. And me and Colby were talking earlier. Neither one of us think that, I think they're going to have to push that date back because there's just so much unknown. And I think if there's not a better structure and a better understanding that comes down, I mean, obviously we're like a week and a half, 2 weeks into
the announcement.
Yeah. And nothing's official yet. But there's got to be a little bit more structure to it.
Absolutely. Which is what they did for us whenever all of our compensation was changed with Dodd Frank. Back in 2011, it was several years before 2008, when it was several years before anything was confirmed.
Right.
Because there's just so much that has to be worked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but it doesn't change the consumer's awareness.
Right.
And all the questions that we're now getting.
Yeah.
And so on the lending side, we were talking about that today. When we're writing pre-approvals, it's important for us to know, I mean, we're going to need that form that is signed that's stating how much the buyer is going to pay, because now we've got to verify they have enough funds.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and then paying attention to those pre-approval letters.
Right.
Because there's a lot of buyers that don't have the funds. And so you don't want to get in the middle of a transaction and then find out they can't pay.
Right.
And then as a seller's agent, if you aren't sure that how the buyer's agent is getting compensated, I mean, which you should, you'll have the form.
Yeah.
But confirming that the buyer has the funds, that part's going to be really important too.
Right. And is that, so with the changes for y'all's pre-approval process, I mean, do y'all have to, is that another thing? Like, because I know there's a checkbox on there that's like you have confirmed funds for down payment, for closing costs.
It'll all just get verifiable assets.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not going to know exactly what assets we're including whenever we're verifying that. So lenders are going to have to be super careful, and they need to ask for the documentation up front.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I think about too is the seller's concession. You still can't exceed what the seller is allowed to pay per program.
Right.
So if the buyer is paying, or the seller is paying concessions on the buyer's behalf, that could be considered it's going to go towards that max concession.
Right.
So,
yeah. And for realtors who don't know, for each different loan type, there's different levels, percentages of the sale price that can be applied towards the buyer's closing costs, which paying a realtor commission is a closing cost. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. The
other thing we were talking about today, in Texas more specifically, there are caps on what the APR can be. So the smaller sales price or smaller loan amounts, since interest rates are already higher and the cost of rates are higher, you add the buyer compensation in there, and is that going to be considered an APR fee? So it's possible that this is going to increase the APR, which could cause some other issues. So there's a lot that has to be worked out on our side too.
Yeah.
So, well, all of our side, because we're in this together.
Yeah.
But
so let me ask you this. When you think back to all the changes that came out from the Dodd Frank and Tilla RESPA stuff, and just the way it changed y'all's compensation structure, how did it change the way that you operated from a business standpoint of like I mean, you're a loan officer, you're a salesperson, your job is to talk to consumers who need a home loan, guide them on the best option, and then get them in a home. So how did that change?
So before Dodd-Frank, before the changes, our compensation would be different based on the interest rate people were willing to pay. It would also change based on loan program.
Right.
So in theory, loan officers were steering people to programs that paid them better.
Right.
So what happened was they changed our compensation to a flat amount. So it doesn't matter what the interest rate is. It doesn't matter what the loan amount is. Nothing changes the percentage of commission earned on a loan.
Gotcha.
So now it's not a flat fee. It is a flat percentage.
Gotcha.
So what ended up happening is it changed. It really was better for the consumer because there really were some bad guys that were steering.
Right.
What it also changed is the accuracy in which we have to provide figures.
Right.
So before, we could provide a good faith estimate and we could estimate what everybody's fees were going to be. And we weren't responsible if we were right or wrong. Now, when we provide a loan estimate, and that is based on the TRID, the Tilla RESPA changes that took place, we have to disclose everybody's fees, regardless of whether they're ours or not, or whether we, if we're not 100% accurate on our fees, we eat it.
Right.
I mean, we cannot charge a penny more than what we originally disclosed.
Gotcha.
Third-party fees, there's a block of fees that we can only be off a total of 10%. It's the 10% of the aggregate we can be off. And then the only thing that we could vary is taxes and insurance and a couple of other fees that the consumer chooses.
Right.
So the business model totally changed for us because there's no room for error.
Right.
And so the loan pricing and the margins, the profit in which lenders have to make in order to cover any of those additional costs was increased. And then the compensation for us as loan officers drastically went down.
Gotcha.
And then you'll notice you have different compensation packages. Credit union's different than a bank. So a lot of those models went to more of a salary model with a bonus versus the commission model. Most mortgage lenders are on 100% commission.
Right.
So, it changed our world.
Right.
Just like it's going to change the real estate world.
Yeah. I think it will. And, that's one question that obviously people on my team and tons of local agents, even some agents out of state that I keep up with, have been asking, how is it going to affect what I do and what our team does? And because there's a lot of panic around all of this. There's a lot of
change freaks everybody out.
Do I have a job anymore? Like, am I still going to be able to make a living? And really what I've told myself and what I'm telling my team is once we figure out exactly what it's going to look like, there's going to be a way to optimize whatever this new system is that hopefully is better for the consumer. Maybe there's going to be some major kinks that need to be worked out before it's better for the consumer.
Right.
Maybe the DOJ will, maybe there's more that we're missing that is hopefully gonna,
government interference isn't typically to your favor though.
Yeah. And so whatever this new way of doing business is going to be, we're going to optimize it. We're going to learn how to best serve our clients in it. and we're going to make sure that we're setting them up for success while making sure we can also still, make a living, because that's the one thing. If you get on any social media platform right now, everybody's talking about how realtors are overpaid and they opened they're glorified door openers, and everybody, I know the sentiment around that. Like, I truly understand it. I get it. People don't understand that there's a 90% failure, or almost 90% failure rate in the real estate industry within the first 2 years, because it's such a hard job and it's so demanding of your time, your emotions, you have to be on your game 24/7 almost to make sure that your clients are successful in getting their property bought or sold, whatever they're doing.
Right.
And so I think that's one thing that, there's still going to be a need for that. There's still going to be people who need a place to live. And that's where we come in. Like I said, whatever
and
that
pendulum's going to swing the other way,
Yeah.
because sellers are going to get sued because, there was a buyer that bought without representation. They skipped the inspection process because they could save a little bit more money, and nobody's there to advise them.
Right.
Or, it's going to go the other way.
Well,
and then we'll meet somewhere in the middle.
That's probably, that's the thing that I've always thought, or, once this came out is, we might see another round of lawsuits in 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely.
Where, in 1996, when the whole cooperative, clear cooperation, or, you have to offer compensation to a buyer's agent, when that came out, it was because buyers were being taken advantage of.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that might happen again if they don't have the right representation. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think from a lender's point of view, I'm like, do I need E&O now? Because my job is just to facilitate the loan.
Right.
But if someone goes into this contacting the seller's real estate agent, has no representation at all, they're thinking that I'm looking out for their best interest, and I am facilitating a loan, and that's it.
Yeah.
I can't give advice. I can't explain. I can't do any of that.
Yeah.
And so my concern is what's
going to fall back on
what's
y'all.
fallback. Yeah, exactly.
Or not y'all, guild, but like lenders. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our part of this is, so it's going to be interesting. And I almost reached out to our legal team today to find out, what are we going to do about this? And I thought it's still too early. I know they can't draw anything, but just knowing what are we going to do to make sure that it's really clear that we're not representing them.
Right.
And we recommend you get an inspection and have them sign something if they choose not to, because
we have to have those forms. Like if we have a buyer that we're working with and they say, I think I'm good, I don't want an inspection, we have to have a signed, like that's a 100%.
And I want it in my file too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
your legal department probably wants their own version of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think about those little things too, because I do. It's not better for the consumer. And a seller not willing to pay compensation to a buyer's agent is just limiting the number of buyers that are going to be willing to buy their property. So I just don't see it as an advantage. But
now I will say, like, if this had come out in like 2019, 2020, 2021, when the market was what it was, I think that there would be a very good argument for sellers saying, look, I'm not going to pay anybody and I'm still going to get 20 offers.
Yeah.
And, there could be that argument.
No.
What kind of trouble they get themselves in the process is a different story if they didn't have somebody representing them and there wasn't a buyer's agent involved. But when you look at the market we're in, where, for a decently priced listing, it can still take 3 to 4 months to get it sold. We're in a fairly balanced market, leaning towards a buyer's market. And interest rates may come down a little bit towards the end of the year, but
we hope
they probably, I'm kind of operating under the impression that they're not going to come down too much more. And, we're in that market where if you're a seller, you need to maximize the exposure you get. Right. And I think the best thing for our sellers to do is offer that cooperative compensation to an agent who is representing a buyer. One thing I also want to talk about, because this is a big one, is how do you think...
We didn't practice this.
We didn't practice this at all. Yeah.
Not that we practice any of them, but
yeah, I mean, I have some notes,
at least
but,
some heads up. Yeah.
so you're talking about how this, can affect buyers. Let's talk about what specific buyers it affects.
Oh, yeah.
First-time home
It's
buyers,
the ones that can't afford
the
it.
ones that can't afford it that probably need it
Yeah.
the most.
So how many of them are, they don't have the funds, Corey? I see folks all the time. They don't have the money to pay up front.
Yeah.
And it's easier for them to buy a house and get a grant and get seller concessions than it is to go sign a lease somewhere.
Right.
And so those are the ones that it's going to hurt, because where are they going to live? I know. I know. Same thing with veterans.
Yeah.
It's not a fee that the veterans can pay. So what are you going to do? Call around to every agent in town in that price range and try to find the one or two houses. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we have sellers willing to pay.
And I think that we also have, at least here in our local North Texas market, I think we have some great agents who understand the importance of compensating a cooperating agent and rewarding them for making sure that their buyer gets the deal closed and everything goes smooth. Obviously they're going to represent their buyer well. We're going to represent our sellers well. But I think that there's a lot to be said about that. Me personally, I don't want to sell a property directly to a consumer as a listing agent. I do not want to deal with somebody who I have no fiduciary responsibility to. I just don't want that liability as a listing agent. I don't want my
just
seller,
like us. You don't want that misunderstanding.
Yeah, exactly. Because I can't represent.
So does that mean that sellers, like someone like yourself who has been in the business for a while and you get a lot of listings from your customers and their referrals, do you team up with more buyer agents that you can, I don't know, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think once again, I don't think there's any need to panic. Like if for people who are in the industry, I don't think there's a need to panic. I think we all need to realize that people need to buy and sell. They absolutely need great representation. And I'm not talking about the 10% of savvy home buyers who are buying and selling constantly,
right? Or
investors who are, could probably write a contract better than most agents. No, I'm just kidding. Who know the contracts in and out. They know the process and, have done hundreds of deals. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about
the ones that need
somebody who hasn't sold a house in 8 years and they just found out they're having twins and they need more space, or the people who, they're living in a 3,500 square foot home that they raise their family in and they can't take care of that, let alone the acre lot that it sits on. And they need somebody to guide them through the process. And then they need somebody to help them find a place that's manageable where they can, still call home and all that. So,
and I think, I hope, I heard a number the other day that 49% of our listings in this area are from out of town real estate agents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it'll be interesting too to see how that changes our local market and for the cooperative commission.
Yeah.
Are we done?
No, I've got one more thing.
Okay, because I have a great ending I was thinking about just while we were talking. Okay.
Okay. So, if we kind of back up, we talked about how there's going to be new compensation models that come out. I don't want to discount the fact that for sale by owner has always been an option. You're not forced to use a real estate agent in this country. There are flat fee listing agents out there that will do the absolute bare minimum and get your property on MLS. There's already a race to the bottom with some of these.
Oh, some of
models.
them are already coming out with new structures.
And it's been here. It's we're going to see new ones come and we're going to see them go because it's not sustainable to provide the service that buyers and sellers need and deserve. And so I just wanted to get that out there. It's not. That's another thing that I think just gives me reassurance that it's not like real estate agents are going to be obsolete. It's a very nuanced business and process.
Yeah.
And
there's
going to be changes.
Just like there was shake up and shake out whenever we went through the same thing.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's going to be changes.
So
So
Michelle's got the outro.
I do. I got the, well, no, you'll have to wrap it up like you
Okay.
normally do.
Okay.
But I was thinking about this the other day. You remember when Uber came out, right?
Yeah.
So the taxi drivers didn't like it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still taxi drivers around.
Right.
Now, Uber totally changed the way we move around,
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a new town. But my thoughts were you can be an Uber driver or you could be that taxi driver that goes on strike because they don't like the way the changes take place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's change. It's going to be different. You have to embrace it and make the best of it.
Yeah. I think as a real estate professional, stay up to date on like absolutely pay attention to what's going on. Don't get overwhelmed. Keep in mind that we're here to help consumers and adapt and evolve and be successful in your business. Yeah.
It's always been about communication and transparency and, just forcing us to change the conversation.
Yep. That's it. All right. Anything else you would like to add?
No, I don't have any other great visuals.
Okay. All right, perfect. So taxi driver, Uber, which one are you going to be? Thanks for checking out this episode of the Unlocking Doors podcast. It's geared more towards real estate agents, but if you're a consumer and you have questions about this, reach out to Michelle or myself. And if you're a real estate agent or a loan officer even, and you have questions, reach out to Michelle, reach out to myself. We'd love to, shed some light on this, and
we'll be paying attention.
Yeah, we'll be paying attention. All right. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. We'll talk to you later.